Prepare to delve into one of the most mysterious and disturbing narratives ever kept in the secret archives of the Catholic Church. This video reveals shocking details about the third secret of Fatima, an enigma that for over a century has intrigued theologians, historians, and believers worldwide. Unlike the official versions, filtered and interpreted by ecclesiastical authorities, the story you're about to hear comes from a direct source, a priest who, defying higher orders, read the secret in its original form and kept silent for decades, bearing alone the weight of a revelation capable of shaking the foundations of faith. At the center of this plot is Father Giuseppe, a 70-year-old Italian cleric who spent much of his life in a humble Portuguese convent. Known for his piety and dedication to the poor, he was a man of prayer but also a stubborn scholar of Marian apparitions, particularly those at Fatima in 1917. For him, these events weren't just a chapter in religious history, but a key to understanding divine designs for humanity's future. What few knew, however, was that during his years of service to the Church, Father Giuseppe had access to restricted documents, including the complete text of the Third Secret, a version that, according to him, contained details so alarming they could never be publicly disclosed without causing panic or a crisis of faith. Why was this secret hidden for so long? What was so terrible about the message delivered by the Virgin to the three shepherd children? These are questions that have echoed for generations, and the official answers have never fully satisfied the curious. Some believe the content involves prophecies about catastrophic wars, the fall of nations, or even an unprecedented spiritual crisis within the Church itself. Others speculate the secret mentions cosmic events or divine interventions directly, altering the course of history. Father Giuseppe, however, took the complete version of what he read to his grave, sharing only fragments with a small circle of trust. What makes this story even more fascinating are reports that in his final years, Father Giuseppe began writing an encrypted diary, blending theological codes, biblical references, and enigmatic symbols. Some pages were recovered after his death, and scholars who analyzed them claim they contain disturbing clues about humanity's future, aligned with apocalyptic visions described in other mystical traditions. Could these notes be the missing piece to deciphering the third secret puzzle? If you want to discover the details of this forbidden revelation and understand why it was considered so dangerous it had to remain concealed, don't miss the next few minutes of this video. Father Giuseppe's story isn't just historical curiosity. It's a warning, an invitation to reflection, and perhaps a window into events yet to come. The truth, as he often said, cannot be hidden forever. Sooner or later, it finds its way to the light. The events at Fatima in 1917 remain one of modern spirituality's most fascinating and debated episodes. It all began when three humble children, 10-year-old Lucia dos Santos and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto, aged 9 and 7, claimed to have witnessed on a remote hill in Cova da Iria, Portugal, the apparition of a lady brighter than the sun. Between May 13th and October 13th that year, this celestial figure reportedly appeared 6 times, delivering messages that would echo through the centuries. The essence of her call was clear. Humanity needed to awaken to prayer, especially the Rosary, as an instrument for peace and conversion in a world on the brink of profound transformation. During the third apparition on July 13th, the Virgin allegedly entrusted the children with 3 secrets: prophetic revelations, blending warnings, and hope. The first was a terrifying vision, a sea of fire and souls in agony plunged into eternal suffering. This image of hell, vividly described by the young visionaries, wasn't just a representation of divine punishment, but a warning about the consequences of abandoning faith. The second secret seemed to speak directly to the dark winds blowing across Europe. In it, Our Lady foretold the end of World War I, but also announced an even more devastating conflict, World War II, unless humanity repented from sin and indifference. The specific mention of Russia and the danger of communism added a geopolitical layer that made the message particularly intriguing to 20th century scholars. Yet it was the third secret that became the focal point of mystery and controversy. Unlike the others, the children were explicitly ordered not to disclose it immediately. Instead, they were to write it down and deliver it to the Bishop of Leiria, with instructions that it only be opened decades later, in 1960. The content remained, shrouded in silence, fueling speculations ranging from prophecies about church persecutions to global catastrophes. The order to keep the secret hidden for so long only deepened the mystery, raising questions about what exactly the Virgin had revealed that required such caution. The three shepherd children's lives took different paths after the apparitions. Francisco and Jacinta, the youngest, died shortly afterward during the Spanish flu pandemic, a coincidence many interpreted as a sign of their brief but intense divine purpose. Lucia, however, lived until 2005, becoming a Carmelite nun and solitary guardian of Fatima's secrets. It was she who, obeying celestial instructions, transcribed the third secret in 1944, sealing it for church authorities. The Vatican, only partially, released it in 2000 under Pope John Paul II, who linked it to his 1981 assassination attempt and 20th century religious persecutions. But was this the secret's complete interpretation? Many believe there's more behind Lucia's words, truth so impactful that even the Church hesitated to reveal them fully. The prolonged silence, fragmentary clues, and Lucia's carefully recorded memories continue to fuel debate. What we know is that regardless of interpretations, Fatima remains a call to reflection, an invitation to look beyond the visible and consider that amid history's chaos, there are messages transcending time, waiting to be fully understood. The year was 1944 when Sister Lucia, the last surviving Fatima visionary, finally transcribed the third secret into a sealed document, fulfilling the order received decades earlier from the Virgin Mary. The envelope was solemnly delivered to the Bishop of Leiria, beginning a journey of secrecy that would only deepen the mystery surrounding its contents. The heavenly request was clear. The secret should be revealed to the world in 1960. Yet when that year arrived, the Vatican chose unsettling silence, keeping the document under lock and key in the Holy See's secret archives. This decision, far from calming waters, cast doubt on the Church's true intentions. Why delay a message supposedly containing divine guidance for humanity? For over 4 decades, the third secret remained veiled in secrecy, accessible only to a select group of high-ranking church hierarchs. Popes like John XXXIII, Paul VI, and John Paul II had the privilege, or burden, of reading its contents, yet none rushed to share it with the faithful. This secrecy fueled all manner of speculation. Some theologians suggested the secret contained warnings so grave they could shake faith's foundations. Others imagined catastrophic prophecies about nuclear wars or the Church's collapse. The Vatican's silence, rather than protecting, only heightened suspicions that something was being deliberately concealed. It wasn't until the year 2000, under John Paul II's papacy, that the Vatican finally published the third secret's official content. The released version described a symbolic vision, an angel wielding a fiery sword, poised to consummate humanity's destruction, until interrupted by a divine voice calling for penance and conversion. The scene also included a pope dressed in white, walking through a devastated city's ruins, before being executed by soldiers alongside bishops, priests, and faithful. The official interpretation linked this image to John Paul II's 1981 assassination attempt, presenting him as a modern martyr and sign of hope amid chaos. Yet not everyone accepted this as definitive. Among skeptics was Father Giuseppe, the same Italian cleric who years earlier had accessed privileged documents during his time in Portugal. He doubted this was the secret's complete version. In private studies and conversations with dissident theologians, Giuseppe argued the Vatican had softened or even omitted crucial parts of the original message. To him, the third secret wasn't merely allegorical, but contained explosive revelations about an unprecedented spiritual crisis within the Church itself, a crisis including corruption among its leaders, massive loss of faithful, and perhaps even a warning about humanity's final days. Father Giuseppe believed fear of scandal and collective panic had led the Church to bury the truth. He cited inconsistencies in released documents, like the absence of details Lucia allegedly described. In private letters, or how the published vision seemed more an enigmatic dream than clear prophecy. His suspicions were shared by a small but fervent group of researchers who insisted there was more behind the secret than the Vatican was willing to admit. Whatever the truth, Fatima's third secret continues to challenge human curiosity. Its story reminds us that in a world where information is controlled, the boundary between sacred and secret often blurs. Father Giuseppe died carrying his convictions, but the question remains: what else is hidden in the Vatican's archives? And if the full version ever comes to light, will we be prepared for what it reveals? Meanwhile, Fatima remains not just a pilgrimage site, but a symbol of mystery still awaiting answers. Father Giuseppe, driven by spiritual restlessness giving him no peace, had reached a breaking point. Years of study and prayer convinced him the Church faced not just external crisis, but internal decay threatening its very foundations. While the Vatican kept Fatima's third secret under lock and key, Giuseppe felt in his heart a divine call. The truth must be revealed, whatever the cost. His conviction was so strong it overcame fear of consequences, excommunication, discredit, perhaps worse. For him, obedience to divine truth surpassed institutional loyalty. With determination bordering on recklessness, the elderly priest began weaving a network of contacts within ecclesiastical circles. Using connections cultivated over decades of service, he gained access to the Vatican's most protected recesses. The night he finally penetrated the secret archives was the decisive moment of his life. The room's silence was almost palpable, broken only by the faint rustling of centuries-old documents. Among ancient manuscripts and papal bulls, his trembling, yet purposeful, hands found what he sought: the third secret's original text untouched by official interpretations. What he read in those lines written by Sister Lucia was more shocking than any speculation. These weren't just symbolic visions, but precise, disturbing prophecies. A great apostasy would spread through the Church, beginning precisely at its top. High-ranking clergy, corrupted by power and worldliness, would abandon essential dogmas of faith. Rituals would be modified, doctrines diluted, and worship of God replaced by a hollow, humanist religion. Worst of all, this betrayal would come disguised as progress and renewal, deceiving even the most fervent believers. By sharing these revelations, Father Giuseppe knew he'd unleash a storm. His words struck like lightning across the Catholic world, dividing opinions between those seeing him as prophet and others as heretic. Bishops accused him of disobedience. Conservative theologians, while privately agreeing, feared supporting him publicly. But for simple faithful maintaining their ancestors' faith, Giuseppe's message resonated as an urgent spiritual wake-up call. The impact surpassed expectations. Reports emerged of priests and nuns secretly confirming signs of this apostasy, infiltrating seminaries and parishes. Leaked documents showed attempts to alter the catechism, suppressing references to sin and hell. Even ancient rites were being reinterpreted to accommodate modern values. All this, according to Giuseppe, was foretold in Fatima's secret, not as inevitable fate, but as a trial only overcome through prayer, penance, and courage to defend authentic faith. In his final years, persecuted but not silenced, Father Giuseppe became a symbol of spiritual resistance. His story challenges us: how far should we obey when institutions fail their sacred mission? How to discern between true tradition and dangerous innovations? Most importantly, do we have courage to face truths shaking our certainties and demanding change? The third secret's full revelation isn't just a warning about future crises, but a mirror reflecting present challenges. And perhaps its most urgent message is this: in times of confusion and betrayal, true believers are called to be light in darkness, whatever the cost. Thank you for watching this video. Leave your like and subscribe to the Living Hope channel on YouTube. Activate notifications by clicking on the bell to receive other publications.